Welcome back, y'all. This is the Bluechip Breakdown, and I'm your host, Bull. Today, I want to take a look at Tennessee's stats to this point in the season and just kind of talk about who's been playing well, who's been living up to the expectations, at least that I've had for each individual player, maybe each position group and each side of the football offense, defense. Maybe we'll even talk about special teams, but we also need to talk about who needs to step up because we do have Oklahoma coming up next weekend. We're starting to get into SEC play. There are a few guys on this team that I think are leaving a little bit left in the tank. Some of that could be due to play calling, but we'll take a look at the numbers, the stats, all that good stuff, and talk about it. As always, y'all, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, let's take a look at our team stats from ESPN.com. Y'all can see up at the top who the team leaders are and all those different categories. But before we get into the actual numbers and just kind of talk about who's been playing well and who needs to play better, I want to talk about the offensive line because their stats are not going to show up on this stat sheet. So if you come on down to the passing numbers, you can see that we've only given up 2 sacks so far this season, and that's actually going to be tied for third least given up in the entire NCAA for FBS. So I think that we're doing a pretty solid job there. Also, 1 sack was definitely given up by our backup team, and 1 was given up to Nico. Was that Lance Hurd or was that Larry Johnson or was it somebody else? I really don't know. I want to say that it could have been from Larry Johnson, but maybe it was Lance Hurd. Regardless, only giving up, really 1 sack to our first team through 2 games in this season. I think that that's good. You can't really ask for too much more than that. 0 obviously would be better, but in pass protection as a whole, y'all, I feel like we're doing a really, really solid job. I would give our pass protection about a B+ to maybe an A-. A few things that we do need to get cleaned up, obviously, and that should be the point of focus and emphasis this game versus Kent State. We had to just make sure that our technique is very, very fundamentally sound. And I'm talking about hand placement, footwork, body control, not leaning over our feet, all of that. Like that needs to look as clean as possible in this game. For us to, or, at least for me to feel very confident that we will continue to be dominant up front, protecting our quarterbacks. Now, also, if you just kind of like look ahead, Nico's a guy that has a beautiful pocket presence and he's going to move. So that sack total, it should be one of the lowest in the entire country throughout the rest of this season. But also, if you talk about the offensive line, just in run blocking, I feel like we've done a really nice job there. We have to continue to do that. We have to continue to build on that. Same exact thing, man. Fundamentals, technique, it needs to just get better and better. It needs to look damn near perfect in this game versus Kent State. I think that the starters only go for maybe about a half. If it was me as the coach, I'd give them about a quarter. Get them on up out of there. Let the backups, all those guys get in, get some confidence and all that type of stuff. Get to kind of show out for their families and friends, all of that. That's the way that I would play it. But I know that Coach Heupel would probably want to get those guys a little bit more work because they have to stay in game shape. They have to stay hungry. They've got to keep their tools sharp, so to speak. But let's talk about our quarterbacks. Okay, let's move this on up just a taste. Let's talk about how our quarterbacks have looked. You see that Nico has 525 yards so far, completing passes at about 75%, 5 touchdowns passing to 2 interceptions. And we know that one of those interceptions really wasn't on Nico. The first one, yeah, he can get that cleaned up, and I definitely expect that he would. There was just no need for him to throw that pass into that much coverage, into that tight of coverage. But I think that really is just who Nico is, y'all. Like, he is a gunslinger. He has a lot of confidence in his teammates and in his arm. And as quiet as this has been kept, I think that if Brew would have kept on running with that one, he maybe could have made that catch. I think that Nico put it in a spot that Brew could have got to. I didn't see that live, but as I've watched the film several times, I think that Brew kind of throttled it down just because there's a million people right there. So why wouldn't you kind of throttle it down? But I think that moving forward, we won't see that from Brew at all. So you feel good about that. I think that Nico's his quarterback rating is at 180.5. Maybe it'll stay around there. Obviously, the competition does get a lot steeper, but I think that he is going to be an efficient playmaker with the football in his hands. And at the end of the day, y'all, the stats don't tell the whole tale. Can we win ball games? That's all I care about. The stats can look however, as long as we come out on the victorious side every single Saturday. And I feel like everything coming all together, we should be able to do that. So, that's pretty much what I am expecting from Nico. Again, about a half. I think that he'll go in this game. And as long as he's in, I would expect that the starting offensive line should stay in too. And I'm talking about the starters. Don't even, do too much rotating. Not in this one. It's just not worth it. But I would expect for him to get about 300 plus yards in a half versus Kent State, which would bring his yards total up to about 800, over 800. And I also think that throwing the ball to the wide receivers will be a big point of emphasis in this game. So expect for him to throw several touchdowns, before he ends up, it's kind of sitting down and just cheering on his his teammates. So I would say that if you look ahead again to the Oklahoma game, he'll probably come out of that one with about 1,000 yards. So now we are either on pace or ahead of where Josh Heupel's quarterbacks have been up to this point, and then that point looking ahead after Oklahoma in the season. So I feel good about that so far. I would say that Nico has lived up to the expectations. Now let's talk briefly about Gaston Moore and Jake Merklinger. Number one, Gaston Moore is going to have to show up, he's going to have to show more efficiency out there on the field. I want to see him very sharp, very crisp. Would love to see him get a touchdown pass, but question for both of these quarterbacks is going to be how lopsided is the score by the time that they get in? Because listen, we can score on defense, we can score on special teams. If we score several times with either of those two groups, then all of a sudden Coach Heupel probably says, listen, let's shorten up, shorten up these quarters and let's just run the football and get on up out of here as healthy as possible. Now, they will still get opportunities to throw the ball, but their numbers might not look as good. Biggest thing for both of them is just going to be to show that they can be efficient with the football in their hands, manage the football game well, and prove that, man, listen, if y'all have to come up into mop-up duty, if Nico's helmet comes off, whatever, we can trust both of y'all to get that job done. Now, let's move on up to the rushing numbers, and let's talk about D. Samp first and foremost. I mean, look at those numbers, man. 256 yards rushing, 8 yards per carry. That is absolutely gorgeous. And, I will tell you this right now, man. I feel like D. Samp is probably, he's definitely top 3 running back in the entire country. And, I think that he's leading the SEC in rushing yards. So that trend hopefully will continue. But at the same time, in this game, I don't see any reason for him to play at all. He might get a few reps, but, man, get him out of the game because he is, in my opinion, the best running back on this team, and I don't think that it's necessarily close. So I want to see a lot more from some of these younger guys. I think that Deshaun Bishop has ran the ball very, very well. You can see 102 yards, and his average is 6.8 yards per carry. We're going to skip Nico. I don't expect for him to run too much in this game, but he probably will just to kind of get his numbers up. But if you talk about Keith, so he's actually our 4th leading rusher, or he's gotten the 4th most amount of carries on our team, 3rd most if you take Nico out. And he's averaging 3.7 yards per carry. That number needs to come up. I need to see him. I need to see Peyton Lewis, who's only averaging 2.7 yards per carry. I need to see those numbers coming up in this game. I want to see them go off. Get them as many reps as we possibly can. Now, Cam Selden, as long as he gets cleared to play in this one, I think that he should get a solid amount of carries because we want to see, hey, can you come out here and help us versus Oklahoma, versus Florida, versus Bama, et cetera, et cetera. And he also needs to get himself into really good game shape. Not to say that he's not, but he's probably not. He hasn't played that much in games this season, but you can see that his average is 6.7 yards per carry. So right now, man, we've got some backs that we trust, 3 for sure, but we need to figure out who the rest is going to be throughout this season. Now, let's come on down to the receiving numbers. And this is pretty interesting because we can tell right here that the wide receiver with the most yards, as y'all probably saw up at the top, is going to be Dante Thornton, and that really all came from the first game. We need to get him, or we need to keep him going, but if you look at who's gotten the most catches, it's actually Chris Brazzell. So obviously, their yards per catch is gonna differ tremendously. But what we need right here is for Chris Brazzell to get into the end zone, especially for him to get several targets in this game. Brew needs to get into the end zone. He has no touchdowns, and so does Squirrel. So those guys should be targeted. I would expect coming out of this game that they each have 1 touchdown. And again, one of this, make sure that we're still working in Dante Thornton. I want to continue to see us utilizing our tight ends in this game, which I'm sure that we will. And then, Caleb Webb, he's had more catches than I thought, but I think that all of his catches have come on some sort of a wide receiver screen. Let's get him going down the field. Then we've got Nathan Leacock. I feel like we need to get him involved. But really, a couple of guys. Oh, and also, listen, Chaz Nimrod only has 1 catch. We have got to get him involved because he can do a lot of things for us this season. But I would definitely expect for us to get, some of these other guys like Mike Matthews, who has not played yet, Braylon Staley, who hasn't played yet. I would expect for them to have really big days. Now, not everyone is going to be able to have a big day from our wide receivers in this game because the score would be 150 to nothing or 150 to whatever. We're not going to put up that many points. But we will target these guys, and I want to see them make the most of their opportunities. I would say that, all in all, number one, man, I think that we have done a good job with our wide receivers. It's hard to say that they've necessarily exceeded my expectations outside of Dante Thornton, but I think that they've played well. I think that they're blocking well down the field. I also feel like whenever their number is called, they are making catches. They're making those tough catches. They're fighting for the extra yards, and that is what I expected. But obviously these numbers are not, I would say that as a unit, probably not as good as I would have thought that they would be up to this point in the season. I mean, it's only 2 games, so it's just kind of hard to call it. But if you, I mean, and a big part of the reason for that is because our tight ends have been such a pivotal point of emphasis in our passing game. You can see that every single one of our tight ends has a touchdown reception. So I think that the tight ends might kind of take a step back in this game and not be utilized as much. We will still use them, but it's going to be a heavier point of emphasis on our wide receivers. And also, man, I mean, you can see that our running backs have some good numbers. I mean, look at D. Samp's numbers coming out of the backfield catching the football. A lot of that's going to be, on some of those screen passes and things like that. But man, look, 6 catches for 66 yards. Ooh, that's a bad number. We need to get him some more and get all that type of stuff fixed because that does not look good in my opinion. And it doesn't look like he has any touchdowns just yet, but he probably will find the end zone as a receiver for this team. Now let's scroll it on down and talk about the kicking numbers. So this looks pretty good right here. I mean, this as far as extra points, I think that Max Gilbert, who I absolutely love, by the way, I mean, that was my first time listening to him speak a couple of days ago. What was it? Maybe Monday of this week whenever he spoke to the media. I like what I'm, hearing from him. You can tell that he's got that dog in him too. And that's so important is to have a team, offense, defense, special teams that is so bought in that just gets it, on a really, really high level. So I trust him. He sounds confident, but 13 for 13 on extra points. Don't take that for granted, y'all. Okay. That is so important to this team. And just as far as with the actual, like field goals, he's 5 of 6. So that's 83.3%. That's not bad. And the one that he missed was 50 plus. He had enough leg, but I think he hooked it a little bit to the left. Either way, it doesn't really matter how he missed it from where I'm sitting at. That's something that I do feel like he will get corrected moving forward. And we are going to need him because some of these games, especially if you talk about playoffs and all that type of stuff, they could be close. As long as he's got that ice water, in his veins, I feel good about what he's going to do out there. Now, actually, I want to talk a little bit about Tuberville because he's done a beautiful job of kicking the ball out of the back of the end zone. Every single kickoff, especially last week, I was like, kick it out the back. And the only one that didn't bounces on like the 2 and it bounces back in and then we're able to, stop them and get the ball somewhere around, like the 5-yard line. So that was great. I just think that the special teams, and it's probably all due to Coach Eck. I don't know who else is working on special teams with him, but man, I think that they're doing a great job. Now, let's come on down here and let's talk about the defense some. Y'all know that Keenan Pili is going to be the leader as far as tackles and things like that goes for this team. I think that he's been playing great. I'm very, very proud of him. Like we said, it felt like he would play a little bit more comfortable in the second game versus NC State. And for all the members of this channel, once y'all see the defense breakdown, y'all are gonna be like, oh man, yeah, this guy gets it. He's very, very savvy. He plays like a veteran. Here's another one that, get him a few reps and then get him on up out of there. I would say less than 10, no doubt for him. And now the second highest tackle is going to be Bryson Easton. We won't go through every single one of these players like this, but I just think that if you look at how things are shaping up this, as far as the tackles, we've got a linebacker, okay, is leading, which that's the way that it should look. Now we've also got a guy in the front 4 is the second highest leading. That's great. And then we've got a safety. So I think that the defense is flowing the way that it's supposed to. Now you see this, it's a bunch of front 7 types of guys on this list. I also think that AC, Arion Carter, man, he's played well, but he's got to continue to learn how to fight through those blocks. That's something that I'm sure that Keenan Pili is trying to teach him some things. And some of that is just going to be muscle memory. He's just going to have to keep on working on it. And I would expect that by about the 5th or 6th game in this season, our linebackers should just be doing a beautiful job of flowing and avoiding blocks. But that's one thing that I would say that Arion Carter needs to avoid. You can see that he's been batting down balls and all that type of stuff. He's going to continue to get better as this season wears on. So that's great. There's still a higher ceiling for this defense as a unit. I also think that Kobe Thomas, he's looked really good playing safety. So proud of him. And really, I would say no one on this list, in my opinion, is a surprise with how they're playing. They're all playing about the way that I did expect. But Jalen Smith, I would say that maybe he is a little bit, I wouldn't say of a shocker, but I would definitely say that he's playing a little bit better than I thought he would this early on in the season, man. And, Caleb Perry didn't get to go last weekend. He should be able to go this weekend. So, I mean, man, look, I think that our front 7 really is kind of being slept on, right? People are talking a lot about that front 4. But I still don't feel like our linebackers are getting nearly enough love, man. Like that's coming. I think that maybe that comes after this Oklahoma game where people say, man, those linebackers are just nasty. That secondary, everyone's flying around and they're, minimizing those passing lanes and windows, things like that. So in this game, I would just expect a whole lot of, sound fundamental stuff, probably get some turnovers from our defense. We need to get some turnovers from our defense. I don't think that one pick is going to be good enough in this one. I want to see several. We did it versus NC State. I don't know if we had any turnovers versus UT Chat. But in this one, we need to continue that trend, go get the football, and I would expect, yeah, I mean, we'll probably have some pick sixes in this one. If the ball kind of, I don't want to say gets past the line of scrimmage, but we will get some interceptions in this game. I can almost promise you that. Kent State's quarterback's not that good, but I want to see what we do with some of these other guys, right? Like we could talk about Boo Carter, right? He's a guy coming in playing at star. I think he played well. Christian Harrison also. I want to see those guys continue to make those strides, make some plays. I want to see them being in the correct positions, come up, make good, sound, fundamental tackles. I think that they do a good job. And I'm saying I can't really group them into the same category, even though they play the same position. They're playing a little bit different. I think that Christian Harrison is a lot more of a sure tackler, whereas Boo Carter is missing some tackles. He needs to get that cleaned up, but they're both, I mean, they're triggering quick. They're getting off blocks. So I'm proud of them from that perspective. I would say it's about where I thought it would be at this point in the season. But also, man, Jordan Ross, this is a game that I would expect for him to get his first career sack, and he might get several. He's a dude. I think we're starting to figure that out now. 6'5", 200 and, about 50 pounds, and he can literally play out in space. I've told y'all that before. Expecting for him to have a big one. And then let's see, where's Caleb Herring at on this list? He's another one. He hasn't really done much of anything. Let's see. So right here, Caleb Herring, he has 2 total tackles. I want to see him step up in this game. I want to see him get to the quarterback. I want to see that twitchiness. I want to see him use his length. I want to see him being dominant, throwing people around, making tackles, maybe punching at the football. I need for him to step up. David Hobbs is another one who I think has shown a very high motor. He needs to keep things going. I want to see him making plays. Jackson Moore, saw him last week and kind of, on one play anyway, he kind of got blocked on a double team. He kind of got sealed on the inside. He needs to get that corrected. You need to be able to fight through and be a little bit more disruptive. Keep those guys off of our linebackers so that they can hunt, so that they can eat. I want to see all those types of things. And then also, man, Nathan Robinson, I want to see him get in. I want to know, is he going to contribute for us this season in a major way, or maybe not in a major way, but will he actually get in some of the bigger games? I think that he can play. I think that he's another weapon for us. And if we do need him, he should be ready. But I want for him to prove that on film this weekend. We also have Wallace, who's playing on the interior of our defensive line. I want to see him kind of stepping up and things like that. Also, I don't know what the heck is going on with Jordan Burns. Is he going to get to play? I want to see him, okay? Edwin Spillman should be back for this game. I want to see what he does out there on the field as a linebacker. We talked about it leading into this season. He should be a guy that we can trust on this team. So, as y'all just kind of looking through these stats and everything else, Eli Purcell, I think that he's looked really good. We haven't really talked too much about our cornerbacks, but Ricky Gibson, I think Jermont McCoy, those guys have looked very, very solid. Will they continue to do that? Also, what does J-Mac give to you? What does Jordan Matthews look like? I need for Caleb Perry, or not Caleb Perry, I need for Caleb Beasley to look better than he has, in a little bit of time that he's gotten to play. I think he's shown that he's physical enough to play, but I need for him to show better coverage skills down the field. We got guys like Edris Farouk, who, look at how many tackles he has. Where the heck? Okay, here's Edris all the way down here. Let me do it that way. So he has 4 tackles on the season, and that's why I couldn't find him, because this thing flipped the wrong way. Let me flip it back. It flipped to the lowest tackles first, I think. All right, here we go. Now we should be able to see him a lot better. I still can't find him. Here he is. All right, so either way, y'all, I just want to see, what all of our backups do. Obviously, Jeremiah T. Leonard, need for him to continue playing how he's been playing. I think that he's been doing a good job. He's triggering quickly. I think he could maybe get to the ball a little bit quicker, right? I think that he can maybe disengage with the blocks a little bit faster. I think that he's doing a good job of scraping over, scraping under, things like that. I know some of that is kind of like, coach talk, and I don't mean to talk that way. My whole point is talking about our linebackers avoiding blocks, getting to the football quickly, punching at the football, making plays. I want to see our team continuing to have fun, but I would say, for the most part, y'all, top to bottom with this team, it's about what I expected it would be, but we have to continue to build and build. And by about game 6 or 7, I would say this team should be, I don't even want to call it peaking. I don't want to peak too quickly. I want to start to peak by playoff time. But, I would say that the offense at least should be clicking, should be gelling really well by game 4 or 5. So versus Oklahoma, or I guess it will be versus Arkansas, we should be really looking good. We should be maybe kind of getting towards mid-season form. But again, you don't want to peak too early for this team. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this team, man. Who has lived up to your expectations? Just kind of like looking at these numbers. Are you shocked by any of these numbers at all? Do you think that we need to do better in any category? Of course, you always want to get better. But have we lived up to your expectations, I would say, as a unit? As a team, or have we even exceeded them up to this point in the season? It's still very early on, but thank y'all so much for sticking all the way to the end. And please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.